Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Tab Sleeve Glover, and we're continuing the photography composition masterclass today. This is episode 10, and we're going to be digging deep into the top 3 photos of Arnold Newman. And this is a new photographer to me. I haven't covered him on the website or anything, but if you're into learning more about composition, be sure to subscribe because that's all I cover on this channel, and I've been doing it for 10 years.
You're working with a professional here! Nice f***ing models!
So you can binge watch all the videos and learn more about composition and design and how to improve your art. So this first image is pretty sinister looking, and that's one thing I noticed about Arnold Newman. A lot of his photos have kind of like a darker edge to them, and this one is definitely sinister looking. This guy reminds me of the Phantasm guy from the Scary Movie.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
You play a good game, boy. Now you die.
But if we look closer, the face almost looks symmetrical, like there's a mirror right on his nose, and it's reflecting the other side. So I'm just going to zoom in and cut half of it right here, and you can see, like, if this was a mirror on the other side, it would look almost identical. Pretty sinister lighting, and it's got a lot of noise in the background. You can see all this contrast, and it's distracting our eyes from the main subject here. So we're going to check the balance real quick. I've got the 5/4 grid in here, and I'm going to draw the vertical and horizontal center lines. Make sure you guys do this on your own art. That way you can see if the balance is correct, and we're going to be using that vertical center line as the fulcrum of the image to balance from left to right. All right, so we've got these 2 pillars here, balance from left to right. This guy is definitely right in the center here. And if we look at the horizontal center line, we can see he's in the lower half, and we've got all this contrast in the upper half here. So it's perfectly balanced from left to right and top to bottom. Now let me check the dynamic symmetry grid. So up here we've got these dominant diagonals running down, paralleling the grid. Not perfectly, but definitely right here, paralleling. You can see his arms trying to parallel here. It's not exact, but it's close enough right here on his hand. If you move that up, you can see it's paralleling there. So he's incorporating the geometry within the frame, which is good. Take these fingers and that top of that hand and move this up, and it's paralleling that. Pretty nice. We can see his eyes and eyebrows are right inside this triangle here, right in his nose, right inside this triangle. Pretty interesting. And even the folds in his smile, you can see that's paralleling there. So is this paralleling the grid. Pretty cool. Now I did find some areas that we can improve this, so we can clean it up just a bit.
Can he clean a diamond ring?
Mr. Clean cleans anything.
And a lot of it was that background. We just got to subdue the contrast and eliminate some of that background noise, subdue it, so we can bring more attention back to this main subject here. So what I did was I first desaturated it to turn it to black and white to get rid of all the color distractions. And the coloring is kind of weird. It's got this blue haze around the edge. It's probably just a bad image from the internet.
The lights were working beautifully on him, but it just didn't give me what I wanted. I said, Herr von Bohlen, that was his family name. He was married into the Krupps. Would you lean forward? And he went this way, and my hair stood on end. There was the devil.
So I desaturated that, and then I adjusted the mask so I could just bring more attention back to the main subject by subduing and reducing the contrast of the background. So this is what it's on. The contrast is all the way down, and the brightness is -37. So quite a bit reduced there to bring more attention. And then I bump up the brightness on the man so he has more contrast, and our eyes are more drawn to that than, say, this bright light back here. Just really distracting. Like, we've got this bright area here, and then all of this up here, really distracting from the main subject, plus all this edge flicker here. Okay, so just a lot of scattered contrast. Could have been better. This type of background lighting, this is ambient light, so you can control that with your shutter speed. Just increase your shutter speed, it blocks this light out, and then you can bump up the power on your strobes or your flashes right here on the left and the right, and then you can control that background noise quite a bit. Well, that's that one. Let's move on to the next one. And I really like this portrait. This one started out as a larger image, but he cropped into the face just to bring attention to these eyes and to the face and the wrinkles and all that.
As I recall your 1954 photograph of Picasso, the word Picasso is the result of a closely cropped and rotated negative. Is that correct?
Well, I think what you're talking about is I used a small portion of a 4x5 negative, which was part of a series that I did. I loved the whole photograph. I still think that is a successful photograph. What I realized in examining the photograph was that the most exciting thing was his face and his eyes. So I decided, what if I were to blow up the whole, just that little section, and make that the full image? And I blew it up, and it was so successful with the old story, less is more. And the impact of that closely cropped head with those fantastic eyes increased the value of the picture rather than decreased it. And it became probably one of my best known photographs.
So he made a wise choice there. I saw a little bit of edge flicker here. It's not too bad, but it's noticeable. Like you could have cropped in just a little bit more, or you could have kept a little bit of negative space on the left just to include that hand a little bit more. It brings a little bit of attention on the left there. Not too bad. But this is a great black and white. Got perfect focus on the eyes. Great lighting coming from the left here, and he's creating mystery. Whenever you cover up an eye, it's kind of like an eye patch on a pirate, and that eye patch creates mystery in the subject. So we have that kind of here, where the shadow is covering his eye and he's more mysterious like that. So that's what he's doing with the lighting. He's creating mystery. And one thing I really liked about this one was the arabesque. It sweeps around these fingers, around the wrinkles in his face, and then down his face down here. So I'll turn that on, and you can see it finalizes itself down here around the collar. So it's a really nice arabesque that's hidden and creates a lot of movement within the image. All kinds of sweeping movement thanks to the way he placed his hand and created those wrinkles. Also got one down here coming down the face here, and then it can swirl around here. Just really nice movement. Nice figure ground relationship in the background. Nothing's distracting us from the main subject here. We've got that dark figure on a light background. This elliptical shape created by his sweatshirt is really nice. Just looks like a cheap sweatshirt. Nothing too fancy, but creating that nice shape there. So let's check the balance. I'm going to turn on the grid and draw the vertical and horizontal center lines. This is the 5/4 grid again. And turn that off, and we can see how the image is balanced from left to right. We got this large hand here. It's being balanced by this visual weight down here. This contrast created, and then the eyes from left to right of that vertical center line, the nose, the mouth, all that centered. Okay, but he's got that balance from here to here, which is really nice. And if we turn on the grid, we can see certain parts of the portrait locking in. We got the eye right here. This is the polar point where the Baroque diagonal and the sinister reciprocal diagonal intersect at 90 degrees. So that's the polar point. The eye is locking in. This eye is locking into that one. Got the nostril. And then we've got the diagonal of this hand coming up here, paralleling that. And with these dynamic symmetry grids, you can put the grid on your LCD and compose the image that way, or you can go into Photoshop later and use the grid to just fine tune and snip your composition into place and lock more things into the grid. So that's a really nice portrait. Let's move on to the next one. And this one was definitely cropped like the Picasso image. You can see it's a lot longer than the standard 1.5 ratio of most cameras, but we've got nice figure ground relationship on the subject down here and then the piano, and we've got dominant diagonals creating visual impact, which is really nice. Got this nice arabesque coming around, this arc sweeping around here, creating nice movement. It's an aspect of view of the piano, so we're getting that nice interesting shape here of the piano. If it was at a different angle, we might not be able to tell. If it was more flat and just linear, we might not be able to tell what it was. This one is the original. You can see how much he cropped into it. Pretty interesting what he comes up with in the final edit. Crops out all this negative space here and brings more attention back to the subject. So, you know, if you're not sure and you're taking photos, just if you incorporate a lot more negative space, you can always come back in and crop it. You're just losing resolution if you do that. Always best to compose within the camera, but sometimes you just can't get it perfect, and you can always come back in and crop it. And that's where the dynamic symmetry grids come into play. So I'm going to show you this. Let me turn on the grid real quick, and this one is a root 8 overlapping. That's just what I call it, and it's 2 root 8s overlapping, and it's on an increment of 4. You don't need to know anything about how it's created or anything. Just if that's the shape you like, you can crop it to that, and you always want to look for the diagonals within the scene. So what's interesting is this one doesn't really have dominant diagonals that are paralleling the exact grid, but one thing we can do with grids is we can add lines to the grid. So let me show you how to do that. So we're going to add the center lines here. Okay, let's check the balance real quick. So if you got this subject in the far left corner, which is a strange composition, but it works. If we take this vertical center line and use it as the fulcrum, so like a teeter-totter, we got to balance the visual weight, and it increases the weight the further you go away from that vertical center line, just like a teeter-totter. Okay, so if you have someone sitting in the center of the teeter-totter, there's not that much weight within the fulcrum, but the more they go away from that vertical center line, it adds more weight. Okay, so what we've got is this guy on the far left creating a lot of visual weight. So what's being done is it's being balanced by this visual weight here. So we've got nice balance from left to right. We've got pretty equal balance. If we take this visual weight, all this contrast here, and smush it up into a ball, and then we take this contrast and smush it up into the ball, we've pretty much got equal balls of visual weight.
Cabron, I need to see you a boss.
Okay, so that's how we can conceptualize balancing your composition. Pretty interesting. So let's add some lines. I'm going to turn back on the grid. So we added the vertical and horizontal center lines. Now we can add this line. So when you add lines, you can create a line from one intersection point to the next. Doesn't matter which one it is, but when you do that, it adheres to the geometry within the frame. Now it's always best to use the geometry of the grid, but as we can see, this line that we've drawn there is paralleling this piano perfectly. Look at that, perfect. That's very, very nice way to incorporate the geometry within this rectangle here. That would be awesome if we took this line and ran it to this intersection and it paralleled that line as well. That would be awesome, but it doesn't exactly. It does up here a little bit. You can see it's paralleling there, but then it curves off to the left here. But either way, we've got nice dominant diagonals, and we've got it in a rectangle that's emphasizing the geometry within it. So it's pretty cool, very nice image, and the crop works well compared to this first one with a lot of negative space. It's got nice figure ground relationship, got the nice pose there, great lighting coming from the left side. We've also got this vertical line in the background. That's the part of the corner of the room. See this line coming down here? That's the corner of the room, but that creates a nice geometric shape as well. But overall, a well-balanced image, cropped to his liking and incorporating the dynamic symmetry grid. So we start out with a sinister looking image that's very symmetrical, got a lot of background noise, but it can be controlled with a higher shutter speed and more control over your lighting. That could be improved. Then we go to a really nice portrait, a lot of movement, a lot of mystery going on there. It's locking into the grid, and then it's got geometric shapes incorporated into the color of his sweater, which is really nice. And then we finish with this really nice portrait of the artist and his instrument, cropped afterwards to perfection to incorporate the geometry and bring attention back to the subject and the dominant diagonals within the image. But that's it for Arnold Newman. Make sure you leave a comment down below if you have any other photographers in mind and you want to see them bumped up on the list. This is going to be an epic series of over 50 photographers, and we're just getting started. So thanks so much for the support, and keep in touch.